Bonnie Ghani, everyone. This is Professor Amin-Ra, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, former city councilman for the city of Compton, former Compton College School Board of Trustees, and former Compton Unified School District Board of Trustees. It's an honor and a pleasure for you viewing in to hear this excellent lecture, along with by my co-host, historian, as we call him, Joe Hembrick. A historian is a person that studies history. That's why they call them historians. And he does this relentlessly. And that's why we refer to him as the historian, Joe Hembrick, because he talks, walks, and breathes Black people history. So we're going to discuss one of our greatest leaders and organizers, and one of the persons that inspired many organizations, many groups, while he was organizing his organization, the U.N.I.A, Negro Improvement Association. And so we're going to let Brother Hembrick come in. Joe Hembrick is a longtime educator for the Compton Unified and Linwood Unified School District, where he was a trailblazer as a first Black head coach in the Linwood Unified School District. And he came over and a teacher and a student of history then. As he moved to Centennial and became an administrator in various roles, vice principal at Davis, junior high school, a long time educator. That means that he had access to the minds of our young people, where he tried to, and in many cases, shape their lives to reach their potential of excellence. So it's an honor and a pleasure and a treasure to have him discuss the Honorable Marcus Garvey, and any other aspects of the Garvey movement that he chooses. So without further delay, Brother Joe Hembrick, historian Joe Hembrick, you're ready to go.
Appreciate that, Professor Ra. Like he said, I was a history major, and after being a teacher for 6 years, I found out that I didn't know nothing, and I had to re-educate myself in the library. So I don't give any credit. Matter of fact, a lot of those graduations I didn't even attend, because they didn't teach me nothing. They said a BS is bull crap, a MS is mo crap, and a PhD is crap piled high and deep. It's job, but it's not education. Education is something you got to do for yourself. But getting with the lecture tonight, last week we had a brother on the show, and I thought, Garvey would have been covered on his birthday. His birthday was August 17th last week, but we mostly talked about music and whatnot. So I wanted to give it a little more attention, because this brother, in my opinion, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, was probably the most profound, man of African descent in the 20th century. The brother, is from Jamaica, born in Jamaica. His dad, his father was a former slave. And, before I get to him and what allowed him to emerge into himself, I got to talk about some of the antecedents that occurred that allowed a Garvey to emerge. Dog, here go this dog, man. I hate that. Excuse me, y'all, for a minute. I muted myself. Sorry about that. But that allowed him to emerge, both in the Caribbean islands in South America and the United States. We got to go back like 100 years before his birth. Mm-hmm. Caribbean,
Somebody, Dina, we can hear you. Yeah, there you go. She muted.
Okay. The Maroon societies that existed from the slave revolts throughout the Caribbean around the 1780s and whatnot, with Jamaica and Haiti. You know, I don't know if you know what a Maroon is, but a Maroon are, you know, people that that escape enslavement, and you know, they created their own societies, you know, mostly up in the mountains, and then they would raid the plantations at night and whatnot, and come back and visit, you know, family and folks that were still on the plantation. So, you know, he's of this spirit. Uh, uh, Roscoe, if you can show his picture, we can see what he looks like. Uh, yeah. And on the island of Jamaica, you know, the land of his birth, there was a real serious social stratification. Although Jamaica is black, is run by the British. And along with the British, the doggone mulattoes joined the British against the common folk like Garvey, in terms of jobs, privilege. You know, they would go by your skin tone, your hair texture, and all this stuff. And Garvey was like a grassroots person. He did have a little privilege in his life due to him being a master printer. When Garvey was 17 years old, you know, he had a printing company. He was printing for newspapers and stuff like that down in Jamaica. And so, and then in the United States, you know, around that same time, we had a lot of Maroon revolts that are not spoken about. You know, the ones we know about is Nat Turner, you know, Denmark Vesey and the like. But there were hundreds of slave revolts and Maroon societies throughout America. This is before America became the United States. And then even afterward, there were still a lot of them around. Namely, one big one was called Fort Negro down in St. Augustine, Florida. It was an old Spanish fort that was abandoned in the 1500s, and the Seminole Indians had taken it over. And the runaway slave would run away and run and live with them. And, you know, the swamp area around Florida kind of put fear in the European from trying to capture them, until, you know, folks raised so much cane that they sent a general down there to kill everyone he could find. And that general was later became President Andrew Jackson, the man on the $20 bill. And there's some speculation about his heritage also, but that's another story. But anyway, this is the type of spirit that Garvey had in him. You know, no fear of no master or none of that. So when he came to the United States, actually he was invited by Booker T. Washington, because, you know, Garvey wanted to get a school, you know, just like Booker T had down in Tuskegee. So he was invited, you know, in, I think it was 1914, and he didn't get here to 1916. And Booker T had died in 1915. So when Garvey when he got down to Tuskegee, the old Boule crowd, you know, he didn't get along with them. And most of Garvey's members in the U.N.I.A., which we'll get to later, were grassroots people. You know, Garvey didn't mix well with the so-called Boule college presidents and all of the black bourgeoisie. He didn't mix well with them. He always did well with the common people, and that's who he attracted as far as his membership into the U.N.I.A. So anyway, he comes to America, and he gets away from the Booker T crowd, and he went up to Harlem. He was invited up to Harlem by this brother Charles Houston, who was part of the Brown versus Board of Education thing with the NAACP and all that, invited him to come to Harvard and speak. And, you know, Hudson had such a great reverence for Garvey, and he stated in his, matter of fact, had a club called the Nile Club, N-I-A-L, no, N-I-L-E Club, like the Nile River. And he was introducing Garvey and said Garvey was more important than Moses in the Bible, according to Hudson. But anyway, you know, Garvey when he first got here, you know, he was a great organizer, but he wasn't that great of a speaker at the time. His first wife, Amy Jock Garvey, you know, he married 2 women and both of them was named Amy. Anyway, she was a better speaker than him. So she got him to go around to churches. There was a old brother used to be on the radio back in the day called Billy Sunday. And they used to listen to him on the radio. And Garvey got a lot of his oratory skills from him and some others. Another was Hubert Harrison, who they called the Black Socrates. He was from the Caribbean also. And, you know, he used to teach at the YMCA back in the teens and the 20s. And they had an organization called the Harlem History Club. And so Garvey would go to these churches and check out these preachers, basically in St. Louis and in Harlem, and he would pick up on things like how the preacher used to get the crowds going and whatnot. So he kind of adapted to that and used that in his own format. And so when he first time he spoke in Harlem, they said Garvey was so nervous that he fell off the stage. And he evolved from there and he got better and better, but he was always a great organizer. So he starts to organize around the country, small cities and rural areas is where he got most of his, membership from the U.N.I.A. And the U.N.I.A. stands for Universal Negro Improvement Association. He wanted to name it, he wanted to use African instead of Negro, but he realized that the people in America weren't quite ready for that term yet, so they went with the term Negro. Sorry, my phone was ringing. He started, matter of fact, he was a great organizer and developing a lot of UNIAs, just like Malcolm was, and Malcolm was getting a lot of mosques started around the country. Garvey was doing the same thing. Great orator. And he spoke with a bark in his voice, letting the people know that, we don't fear anyone, and he was trying to bring to African people's memory when the world evolved around us and we were the center of attention compared to all other civilizations. So he wanted to bring back people back to that. And he also developed the concept in terms of do for self. But anyway, the U.N.I.A. grew. There were some things that allowed the U.N.I.A. to grow like it did. Number one, it was right after World War I, which ended in 1918. And, Blacks were coming back from the war and they thought that they were gonna be able to, rise up in the ranks in society because they went over and fought and found out that that didn't happen. I forget who the Attorney General was at the time, made a big speech to Black people telling them that, that he knew what they expected, but their lot was not gonna change. So Garvey was telling everybody, see, they don't want you here. Matter of fact, they hung a lot of soldiers with their uniforms still on. During the time of the 1919, the Red Summer, when all the race riots were going on in major cities, where Black people were, a lot of Black people getting killed. And Garvey was, he was pressing the point, they don't want us here, we need to go back home, So, the U.N.I.A. sprang up everywhere. It was like 27 chapters in South Africa and about the same number in Cuba. So, he had a large membership. And I read some accounts that said 3 million, other accounts said 6 million, worldwide. So he was always promoting self do for self, self-reliance. We can do it ourselves. We've done it before, and let's get busy. So, you know, during the Harlem Renaissance of the 20s, you know, Garvey was able to develop a lot of job stuff for folks, especially in the artist world, singers, dancers, you know, musicians, doctors, lawyers. They really started to organize and kind of, you know, come up with, you know, serving each other instead of us running to other folks for goods and services. Then he started the Black Star Line, which was a shipping company. You know, along with his, you know, Back to Africa movement, he said, well, we're gonna go back to Africa. We need to go back on our own ships. So he started buying ships and developed the Black Star Line. And here is a, Rashaki, if you can blow this up for me. This is a piece of stock of the Black Star Line. Can you see that? Rashaki?
Yes, lift it up a little bit more. You have to speak.
Okay. Yeah, is that high enough?
You got it.
Yeah, every time somebody speak, a big old picture come up. So you had it good. Yeah, you can do it another time. Go ahead and start talking.
Black Star Line. And which, you know, which enabled him to buy, he bought one ship, then two ships, and then a third ship. And they were trading goods with West Africa, from the United States, with West Africa, the Caribbean and South America, and then back to the United States. So this put a fear in the powers that be because of what the Europeans were going through and just came out of, which was this war, this 4-year war of white folks killing white folks. So, you know, they were able to slip through there and get some things going with, you know, with the European concentration being somewhere else at the time. So the Black Star Line was doing well. And I remember I read one account where they had some bananas they had loaded up. And there was a lot of people in the countryside down in the Caribbean that wanted to come see the ship. So the ship captain was saying, man, if we're gonna get these bananas to their destination, we got to go. And Garvey like, no, I want to wait on the people to come because it's more advantageous for them to see us with our own ships, operating our own ships, than a load of bananas getting to their destination. So he, you know, he was all about inspiring our people to do what we've done before, and therefore we can do again. But what happened with the Black Star Line? As you know, the powers that be, you know, once we get anything going, they always infiltrate, and that's what happened. There was some black bourgeoisie that was speaking real bad against Garvey to people in government, saying he was a dangerous Negro, and, you know, don't let him do this, don't let him do that. And so that's what started them like getting on, you know, Garvey's back about what was going on. And, you know, so they brought a case against him talking about mail fraud, which was bogus. But there was one thing that Garvey should have did better, was get him some better financial people that could have handled all those books and stuff, because Garvey was always going around the country raising money. And there's some European historians that try to say that Garvey, you know, never intended to go to Africa. He was just ripping people off of their money, which was a lie. Garvey on one of the ships, he sent back $50,000 worth of equipment to build factories and whatnot for when they returned home. And that was going to be in Liberia, which was already a back to Africa colony, so to speak. So things are going well. And when the ship got there, when the people, was it Firestone Rubber Company, which had control of the Liberian government, told them not to let Garvey's ship dock in the harbor. So they were stopped. They were never allowed to get off the ships and were sent back. And then when he got back, the court case was going on with the mail fraud, and it went on and on and on. And a lot of the propaganda, like from W.B. Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, and others, see the bourgeois blacks feared that what Garvey was doing was going to hurt their position in society and bring something down on them that they didn't want. Many of us still fear the sting of the lash, when it comes to old massa. So these things kind of snowballed, and things started to, as a lot of corruption started, especially when they brought the court case against Garvey. I remember one of Garvey's clerks. Matter of fact, Garvey was eating his lunch after doing a lot of paperwork. And one of the clerks came and said, "Mr. Garvey, when are you gonna get your new car?" And Garvey said, "Son, I can't afford a new car." And the clerk said, "I don't know why you can't. I got me one." So it shows the level of thievery that was going on. And if you read in Garvey's Philosophy and Opinions, he spoke about that, said that when they caught Black people in the U.N.I.A. doing that they weren't just gonna kill them, they were gonna kill their family members also. I don't know if that ever came to fruition or not, but that was in his philosophy. So, they end up convicting Garvey. They exiled him back to Jamaica. He ran for office once he got there, and he won the first election. But the next time he came up for election, the mulattoes in Jamaica had turned against him with the powers that be, and he lost. And he went back to doing what he did, which his craft was a master printer. And he started back printing, and he went to England and printed for a couple of newspapers and whatnot. And right before he got on the ship to go to England, it was about 10,000 people down at the dock to see him off. He was supposed to give a big speech. And he just said a few words. He said, "This country of Jamaica is one crazy place," and walked and got on the boat and just left. Anyway, Garvey, the reason he's such a significance is what he allowed to emerge after him, things that came about. For example, Pan-Africanism arose out of, from Garveyism. Also, organizations like the Nation of Islam, Do for Self, the Panthers, Malcolm X, people that were in the Harlem History Club that heard him speak for some Africans that went back to their countries, like Nkrumah in Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, and Patrice Lumumba. When these men returned home after the Garvey era, they started to work on African independence. And 23 African nations end up getting their independence as a result of, Garvey's influence and his teachings. That's pretty much, and the Black Star Line, some of those captains kind of sabotaged the ships and, made it so they wouldn't run anymore, and it kind of caused the whole demise of the whole organization. But, the U.N.I.A. is still alive. It's alive in many countries around the world, and they're still practicing those principles that he taught. So I'd like to stop for a minute, take any questions and whatnot.
All right, Brother Doctor, you have any questions?
No, not right now.
Brother Mashenda? Okay, Brother
No,
Mashenda.
not right now.
Okay.
No, I'm just enjoying the history. Very things I didn't know, some things I knew, but I'm enjoying the presentation. Thank you.
Brother, Sister Dina,
Who started U.N.I.A.?
who started it?
Marcus,
Yeah.
Marcus Garvey.
Who?
Marcus Garvey, the subject.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Dina?
Mosiah Garvey, to be exact.
Miles Garvey?
Marcus Mosiah. Mosiah.
Okay. All right.
You have any other questions, Dina?
No, sir.
Let me say this and answer the question, Raw. And
Mhm.
his wife, both wives were named Amy. They were very instrumental in what Garvey, like I said, his first wife was a great speaker herself. And then they got divorced. Some speculation about, with her and Hubert Harrison. So they got, Garvey married another woman named Amy. One of them was Amy Cox and the other one was named Amy Ashford Garvey. He had two sons with the first wife, and I think a son and a daughter with the second wife.
All right. Any other questions? Joe, I have a few. I would like for you to elaborate more on what you meant by the boule, if you have any information on that.
Well, boule is a reference I was taught by Brother Kaleem Akil. It basically refers to the Black bourgeoisie, namely, Black presidents of universities, the heads of the fraternity situation, those type of brothers and sisters, fraternity, sorority, the Masonry thing, Eastern Star, all that type of crowd.
Okay, and what about when you say mulatto, what do you mean?
By mulatto, mulatto is a person of mixed heritage. A mulatto is usually mixed with European and African. And then you have the mestizo, which is what most of the Latinos in America are. They don't know it. But that's a mixture with Native American and European. And then you got the Zulatos, which is a mixture of African and Native American.
Okay. Did you find any information on the status of Marcus Garvey being a committed and astute and deeply religious Christian?
I don't know about the Christian thing. I know he was like one aim, one destiny, one God. But I know if he was, it was definitely Black. But if whoever he believed in his deity to be, it definitely was Black like him, that's for sure. But a lot of the people in the Caribbean, or still had the old African religions that they brought, which the European labeled as being voodoo, trying to scare us from wanting to give any attention to it.
Okay. What about when they say sometimes Marcus Garvey, some scholars, Tony Martin and them who profess to write about Garvey, refer to him as a Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist that led to the concept Garveyism. Did you find any information on his works that symbolizes Black nationalism and Garveyism?
You talking about Tony Martin?
And Pan-Africanism.
From Tony Martin or Garvey?
From Garvey.
Oh yeah, Garvey, everything was Black nationalism. That was his whole ethos. do for self, practice self-reliance, deal with each other. I know when it came to businesses, because he inspired a lot of Black people to start businesses. And just like today, when we deal with each other business-wise, we run into issues. And Garvey had a philosophy about not making that public, keep it in-house. Don't be criticizing your brother or sister because of the exchange that you dealt with them in business. And you know what I'm talking about when I say that. So he was very adamant about not making that public, keep it in-house and work it out. And as far as Pan-Africanism, can you hold a second, Ron?
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm doing a podcast show. I'll call you right back. Okay. All right. So, and as far as Pan-Africanism, he visited, there were U.N.I.As, springing up all over Africa. And during the 20s, many of the people that would later become African rulers of nations were in New York in the Harlem History Club, like Nkrumah and Jomo Kenyatta. So these guys were learning this stuff about, breaking out of colonialism. And, I credit Garvey with inspiring them to, when they got back home, to do what they did in terms of getting independence for their countries from European control.
And some writers say that his Black nationalism was infused with, was a part of his separation. He believed that Black people had to have their own nation, their own businesses, and separate from America, build their own country or build their own state. And that was his concept of nationalism. That's where the Nation of Islam get separatism from. Garvey introduced that concept. And as far as Pan-Africanism, he also called for the unification of the continent of Africa. He wanted to unite all of Africa and even the diaspora. And that's where the Pan-African came from. He talked like that because he called himself the provisional president of Africa.
Right.
And he also called himself organizing Africans in the United States under the U.N.I.A, which originally was formed in Jamaica. And then when he moved to the United States, he brought the organization with him. And he formed what was called the N.I.A.
And the
U.N.I.A. And he also formed another group along with it called the African League of Communities, or African Community League, which he called himself the provisional general and president of. And that's why he got a lot of criticism, because when he brought the organization over here, they say that some of the intellectuals didn't like the term Negro. And it didn't like African. He wanted to use African. When he left Jamaica, he wanted to form an African IA, African U.I.A. And then when he got here, he got some people started criticizing him, according to some of my reading, and so he kept it the Negro. He kept the Negro in it, but he didn't like that. He saw us as Africans in diaspora. Another thing, he went to a school in London, Birkbeck, where he got his education. And as you said, he came from a moderate affluent family, and he developed apprenticeship in printing, but he was also a great writer. He couldn't speak, but he could write. And he published a lot of newspapers, and some in different languages. And that's what helped him organize. Because he went to Harlem first, and he began to work with the people. He didn't like working with the boule. His message was for those that were suffering. And that's what he organized and started businesses and things of this nature. So my question to you is that as Garvey grew in organizing and his philosophy, Garveyism, expand, why isn't there more emphasis, more education about Garvey in public high school and in really university and among the Black community in general?
Well, to address something you asked earlier about the Pan-African thing and about the land where the nation came from, well, Garvey wanted to go back to Africa, period, which is our land. He wanted all Africans to return home and take over and do what needs to be done. And what was that last thing you asked me?
Well, I was asking you, why isn't there more education about Garvey and his contribution to other organizations that grew off of him and splintered off of his Garveyism? And why isn't it taught in public high schools or a part of the curriculum? And even more emphasis on him. Like they had a Garvey class somewhere in a white college, but I've yet to see any of the Negro 100 colleges say we're going to study Garveyism.
Well, it's obvious why they don't want to emphasize it, because of what it's talking about. If it's talking about us uniting as far as, a self-reliance, us operating with each other with goods and services, you just look out there and let's just take American society, and we're all about entertainment and sports. Well, look who's out there doing it. If we had control of all of that stuff ourselves as Black people, the European couldn't make no money off of us. So, and matter of fact, I did a survey the last couple of days about, the first time people ever heard of Garvey. And they were grown, they were out of school already. And so, they don't want us to know because they don't want to, especially anything from the Caribbean, because the Caribbean is strong in that revolutionary spirit, that spirit of the Maroon. And they don't want that here. And it's obvious as to why. Because they're making a lot of money off of us. They're keeping us down. They know that we ruled the world at one time. And because, most of the planet is Black, brown, red, and yellow people. The European is a small percentage of the world's population. So if we wake up to what our past was about, and definitely when someone shows you, a way to get back there, they're gonna move on it. It's just that simple. And those that are out there that are in these positions that we see a lot, they're out there because they're not pushing Black people in that direction that we just spoke about. They want to keep us divided, and as long as they keep us divided, they got us. But if we were communicating with each other around the world, it's nothing that they can do with us. But that's one thing they cannot let happen, is us to unite and talk to each other and plan with each other. It'll be over for the European. He'd have to submit or push that button, which he got it to push nowadays, and kind of, that's what I was saying about South Africa. If the South Africans took over South Africa, what is it, 4 million compared to like 22 million Zulus down there? Come on now, they couldn't, they can't allow that to happen. And that's why we suffer a lot of the things that we suffer, because of that fear. The powers that be know the truth and know the truth about us. These old dumb rednecks don't know a lot of nothing. They just prejudice and being racist out of ignorance. They really don't know. And along with that, there's a lot of our people that don't know. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay, but see, some of the fundamental things that is very important is that just like Malcolm and Martin Luther King had two different philosophies. Malcolm wanted separation, King wanted integration. The whole civil rights movement was a Christian movement for integration. They want equality. And Malcolm said, I don't want to be equal to the white man. Because look at him, look what he does, morally and ethically. And that's the same thing with Garvey and Du Bois. Du Bois was pushing integration at that time. And so he was against Black separation. But at the same time, when Garvey started, according to some research, Garvey started the Black Star Line, it was a shipping and passenger company. And he never went to Africa, because he wanted to start corporations and businesses with those Africans that went and started Liberia and Sierra Leone. And the Europeans sabotaged that movement. But the beautiful thing about Garvey was his love and commitment to the people, and the ones that he organized in Harlem and the New York area, millions as he became a good orator and a good organizer. I mean, he didn't have no internet, he didn't have no telephones, they didn't have no radio, but he was able to reach these people through his writing and through his traveling throughout the suffering cities at that time. So when we think about Garvey, and one of the reasons it's not taught is because a lot of the educators who got their degrees, as you said, see, when we started Black Studies, Garveyism and Du Boisism and Martin Delany, and we covered it all. Then Negroes began to take over Black Studies, and they began to shift the title. We even had a class called Guerrilla Warfare, and a lot of information about our struggle as a people, which Garvey focused on struggle, and that he preached Black excellence. He got that from Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was a person that dressed well all the time, and was talking about pull yourself up by your bootstrap. That we was a great race, and that we could do things with our hands and skills. And Garvey was teaching that. But the Black people at that time in the 1920s and the things of this nature were just coming out of a lot of oppression. And they, some of them, especially the Boule, as you'd say, they had their interest in accommodating whites because whites were hiring them and whites were giving them the loans to buy property. It's just like the Nation of Islam or some religious group. They get their funding from the European, and so they don't speak hard of them. They try to organize it. So Garvey and Garveyism was about Pan-Africanism, about Black nationalism, was about cultural practice and consciousness. In his books, I sent you a bunch of them, Rashidi. I don't know if you got them through the email. His books and his writings, and even some that was written about him. Philosophy and Opinions, as Joe brought up, along with a whole list. I don't know if you saw them, Rashidi, but and we can pull some of them up. But when it came to literature, Garvey was one of the best, from that standpoint, Joe. But I just want you to know that, he was criticized, and they tried to jam him because he didn't go back to Africa.
Right.
Yeah, Yeah.
You know, as busy as he was, you know, constantly raising money and all of that. And by that time, the court case had started. And so probably occupied with that. But the biggest thing I think that he did not do was get better financial people to assist him in what he was doing. Matter of fact, you mentioned about, you know, the black colleges not teaching about Garvey. And I went to Loyola. That's the first time I heard about Garvey. Was a class I took at Loyola Marymount. And they used the book of these two white historians who tried to portray Garvey as a swindler and whatnot. And at the time, I didn't know no better, but I really dug the stuff that he had did. Then later on, doing research, I found out the truth about what he's actually doing. But But Garvey was a grassroots type of guy. He dealt with maids, taxi drivers, butlers. Those are the type of folks that he attracted. Like I say, the boule people, the ones who already had position in society, kind of went against him. And W.E.B. Du Bois was big time. Call him in the paper, gorilla, looked like a monkey, all this old kind of stuff he was saying about Garvey. And then after he found out how he had been used to undo the Garvey movement, he wrote Garvey a letter apologizing for what he had did, because he went through some transformation stuff himself when he was a boy. The town that Du Bois grew up in, the top student always got a scholarship to Harvard. And when it was Du Bois' turn, they didn't send him to Harvard, they sent him to Fisk. But after he kind of woke up, he went to Ghana and never came back to the United States. He died over there. Talking about Du Bois. So how the FBI's program goes. They're either gonna exile you, smear you, or assassinate you. One of the three. And so, in case they decided to exile him.
Excuse me, Henry. I wanted to know. This is what I heard, and I don't know how true it is, but did J. Edgar Hoover start his COINTEL program with Marcus Garvey? Because I know they had put somebody in there that was right, like a person that was really close to Garvey as an agent. Have you heard that before?
Well, in all of my studying, the man who started all of this was a guy that a library is named after on the Howard campus, Spingard. Spingard was a military man who I think started this whole stuff, and then Hoover came in later and kind of expounded on it. But to say that, well, I guess you can find out about it in a book called Race First by Tony Martin. He writes about all of the movements that occurred with Black people and how they were done through spying and, covert activity and all of that. So that'll be a good book for you to check out, Race First by Tony Martin. And Tony Martin wrote several books about Garvey.
Okay.
But however they want to paint him, they cannot take away the things that emerged from him and the things that he did. Like African nations becoming independent, fighting for their independence, all the organizations that evolved from Pan-Africanism, all the groups that emerged, like Do for Self. Like I stated on the show last week, Malcolm's father and 6 of his uncles were in the Garvey movement, and they were not a back down type people because they didn't have nothing to lose. They were butlers and laborers. but the ones that had a little influence and privilege, they were afraid that, getting with Garvey would kind of take them out of the position they was in. The same thing when Malcolm was alive. When Malcolm was alive, shoot, them handkerchief head Negroes see Malcolm coming, they get on the other side of the street. And now they want to celebrate him, since his death. But when he was alive, they did Malcolm the same way. So that
The other thing is, it's very critical that this agent that was working with the FBI against Garvey, and I'll get his name a little later, but he was a part of the U.N.I.A. And they indicted Garvey for mail fraud.
Dolphins.
Yeah, Dawkins.
Adolphus, I believe I read his name.
Dawkins. And then
Garvey fired him. And
yeah.
once Garvey fired him, he just went at Garvey with a vengeance with the powers that be.
And so they indicted Garvey for mail fraud because he was soliciting investments into the Black Star Line movement and the U.N.I.A. And he received a $25 donation, and that's what they indicted him on. Then they had a trumped up trial, found him guilty, and then they put him in prison. Then they deported him. See, they had to criminalize him to turn and put out propaganda that he was, stealing the money, so that the people would turn on him. And once you get arrested, and you don't have the mechanism like Malcolm to turn the people around when he got arrested, because he wasn't an activist when he got arrested. Malcolm was a pimp and a hustler and a dope dealer when he got arrested. He got turned around in prison. But Garvey was a Black nationalist, so they had to demonize him to make Black people stop thinking Black nationalism. And that's why they gave him so much time and then deported him. And when he left, all this support left him. And as Tony Martin outlined, and some documentaries outlined, that he was alone.
Right.
And he really wanted to come back. But the people just left him there alone, and they demonized him so bad he couldn't reorganize nowhere else. And as far as COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, it didn't start with Edgar J. Hoover or that guy that was in the Strindberg. Europeans started altering our intelligence as soon as we had close encounters of the third kind, where we actually touched. When they brought us over here, you weren't allowed to name yourself. They even separated us if we had the same language. You couldn't practice nothing African. Even the dramatization of Roots showed y'all they punished you. If you even mentioned or dealt with African, they converted you into, they call themselves, first for 100 years, they treated you like an animal. And then as time progresses through struggle, they indoctrinated you with religion, especially Christianity, their version of Christianity. I ain't talking about the Black version. Because Black people be serious about their Christianity. White man uses it as a tool to take over the world and to take over your mind. And that's why you couldn't dress African. You dress up like white folks. You name your kids after white folks. And that's how they measure the effectiveness of them countering your intelligence. Are Black people still naming their kids after us? Are they still putting on ties with rope, like a rope around their neck, like us? Do they still look to us to educate them? Yeah, because they crippled us and polarized us mentally. And as Joe so eloquently said, created fractionalism and division to fight each other. They taught us to kill each other. In fact, they used to pay us to kill each other, to hunt each other down for them. That's countering your intelligence. It's unnatural. Even when Fannie Lou Hamer said the guard that beat her while she was in jail for organizing the Mississippi Freedom Party, a political party in Mississippi, when she walked off the plantation and they fired her and they put her in jail. They got a black guard to come in and beat her. And in her memoir, she said she forgave him because they made him do it. That's the beauty of reading and studying. You're not gonna get, well, I ain't gonna give you no education to liberate you mentally. Free people name themselves. Animals and slaves are named by their masters. I'm just trying to tell you something.
Let me just interject this, Brother Raw. And what a lot of people always ask, like, what happened? What happened? Do you know that prior to Arabs, and European coming to Africa, there was no such thing as tribal wars against each other? It didn't exist. Africa operated on what you call a territorial state. It would be like 6 countries together, and they would exchange goods and services. No money involved. It's called barter trade, okay? When the Europeans came in as a part of the Berlin Conference in 1888, they divided up, carved up Africa like a pizza. Every European country took some land, and they came up with these real strict borders, cut the territorial state down to a small size to create conflict amongst the Africans that was on each side of the borderline. Okay, that's how that stuff started. So, he always creates conflict, to keep us apart. And let me mention another brother that needs to be mentioned also. And they kind of painted him in a dastardly way through propaganda. And I know this may raise some of you guys' eyebrows, which is General Field Marshal Idi Amin Dada, the brother who told all the Europeans, get out my country, I'm taking our stuff back, y'all get on the plane and get the hell out of here. They painted him through propaganda, he's a cannibal, and this is where they got Black America. He's killing 100,000 Christians. They never showed you no bodies, okay? Didn't show you no bodies. This brother had what Africa needs today. Because if you go to Africa and you go to Jamaica, the Caribbean, white folks running the show. Ain't no black people running nothing in Jamaica, the Caribbean, or in Africa. These corporate entities are running things. And if you rise up, and even the black colleges in the United States, which Brother Rob mentioned, they get their money from Europeans. That's why they're not gonna rock the boat. Okay? Matter of fact, I'll be talking to a lot of black students that went to black colleges, and I ask them about, African heroines like, Imhotep and people like, they don't know what I'm talking about. I said, you at a black college, right? They said, yeah. Matter of fact, one sister was majoring in engineering, and she never heard of Imhotep. That's a sin. This was the first multi-builder in the world. And you don't know about him, and you're an engineering major, and you at a black college? Come on, man. They don't want us to know. And I used to tell my students, I try to encourage them to read, because, I had them going on in my class that they had never heard the stuff I was teaching them. And I told them, I said, look, they kill people like me for telling you what I'm telling you. So don't go saying, Mr. Hembrick said this, Mr. Hembrick said that, because I haven't written a thing. I ain't wrote one book. I said, you read these books. And don't say nothing until you can quote the author. If you can't quote it, keep your mouth shut. And we still at that state right now. We don't want to read. They got these things called audio books. What is up with that? Read the written words. See what the people said. Read the cross references. And let me just say this in parting. And it's just not Black. There's a bunch of white historical scholars who have written the truth, but they don't use them in the university system either. Like Kersey Graves, Church Ward, and all those other white cats. They don't use them in the system either because they told the truth. It's just like a thread on a sweater. You pull that thread, pulling the truth out, the whole sweater will come apart. And that's what they are not gonna allow to happen. And they're gonna keep that in check by any means necessary, to quote from Malcolm. And there it is. I want to thank the audience for listening. I'll let Brother Ra take us on out, and Brother Rashakid, unless anybody else got any questions. But appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. I hope put some on your mind, mainly about getting the book. And it doesn't have to start with a big group. We can start with each individual self by looking in that mirror and love what you see and say, I'm gonna start today, helping my people by any way I can to wake up the walking dead so we can kind of get out of this funk that we in. Thank you.
Yeah, and Sante Asana, Brother Henry, for the excellent presentation. Appreciate it most. And that's okay for us to read. That's good. But you can also use technology. They got some good films and good videos that you can use if you, for whatever reason, don't want to read. Take advantage of the YouTubes and lectures on YouTube. Rashakid's constantly surfing the YouTube and coming up with excellent lectures that he recommends. Just Google Garvey. And why? You say, well, why would I do that? So that you can educate your children, your relatives, your cousins, and yourself. What we covered today is just highlight. There's a deep need to appreciate your heroes and heroines that did miraculous things, and we don't hold them up in the light that we should, and use them as role models to emulate, as far as character, values, and as far as their commitment to give us a way to better our lives and an attitude to better our lives. I speak to some kids today through Zoom. I told them, I said, you don't have no business not getting A's. I mean, we named the stars and the sun, the moon. We created the first 12-month calendar. And you sitting up here, playing with TikTok and all of that. Your brain is way more superior than any other people because you're the original people. And I think that we as a people must remember the primary education unit is the home, not the school. You go to school to get skills and develop intellectual skills so that you can go further. But you don't let them indoctrinate you and make you think that, as Malcolm said, that you're an American citizen. You live in America and you pay taxes to America. But you ain't no American, because if you was an American, Judge Floyd would be alive. Breonna Taylor would be alive. Trayvon Martin would be alive. And those that killed them would be facing death penalties or even more penalties than what they got. And we can go back to Larry Morris, You Will Love, who, by the way, went to Compton High, Joe, You Will Love. and all those things that we need to begin to focus on as a people, as far as, going back to starting mom and pop stores. Right now, you can just set up a store on the corner like everybody else doing. And I see some Black people starting to do that. Have some ingenuity. That's what Garvey taught, ingenuity, and what we can do. That's why you study people like Garvey. His aptitude toward being better and being our rightful self is unmatched. So Rashiki, you can take us out.
All right, excellent information, Brother Hembrick and Brother Ra and all the contributors that came this evening. I want to show you what we have for not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday on the 31st. So we got Brother Thomas, one of our team members. He's going to talk about reproductive evolution. All offspring must pay it forward. So that should be interesting. I read some information by Brother Thomas related to that topic, and it's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. So anybody for next week, Professor Rob?
I'm gonna try to get Damien.
I think Brother Joe, you're on mute.
Wait, 22nd. Wait a minute. I think, well, I don't know, Professor Akinsanya, he was part of the Sacramento Four that shot it out with the police. He may be a guest of either this Brother Damien. I'll let you know tomorrow.
I spoke to Aki Emoto today, and I like next Monday, but we don't have a topic yet.
So for next Monday?
For next Monday.
All right.
Okay, so Brother AK is coming on, right?
Good.
Okay, should be very interesting. Brother Doctor enjoyed Brother AK's book. So that's a good one.
Doctor, you not no questions for me this evening, sir?
Brother Doctor.
I can barely hear Brother Henry. What did you say?
He said, you didn't have any questions for him?
You know what? I did have one question. And I just need you to verify this. Now, I got the book. I'm looking at the book right now. Race First, Tony Martin's red cover. I got all these books here. But my question, and he knows this facts. When he organized and wanted all the Blacks to leave, the United States was going to charge every Black to leave, or it was something they were going to do against the Blacks so they wouldn't leave? What was the story behind that?
I'm not knowing what you're referencing.
I can barely hear you. Is that, I don't know if that's me or?
I don't know. I have to, I got the book here also. I probably need to reread it again.
I can't remember why I saw it, but I thought I read something where he was attempting to get everybody to leave, like you said, on the boats and all this, but then the government came out, was going to charge everybody. Because I know right now, if you want to denounce your citizenship, you got to pay a fine. You got to pay a fee. I know that. But they were going to do something, charge, everybody's going to pay a fee to leave, and it was a fee that Blacks couldn't afford, or it was something the United States was going to do, something weird to do where Blacks couldn't leave. So I can't remember where I saw it or heard it from. I just wanted to verify if that was true or not.
It probably was. It's probably, something like the Black codes, like the grandfather clause and the poll tax and all that, when they was trying to, stop us from voting. I'm sure they were coming up with some because they did not want us to go. And they did not want us to get there and unite with other Africans. So I'm sure that's a correct thing. I just got to reread the book. I tell you, that's a great book. I tell you, Race First, you pick it up and read it. is hard to put down. It's hard to put down. It's a great book. And you know, Tony Martin has written several great works. So
I know one thing, that Garvey was criticized for taking the same position as the Ku Klux Klan, who wanted a white nation and don't believe the races should be mixing. So accused Garvey of being in association with the Klan. Now, when it came to raising money, when he said he want Africans to leave back to Africa, white people started donating. Those were racist. They donated a lot of money. So it's a question of, as you raised, Doc, which is a good question. You know, go ahead, Joe.
just like with Booker T. Washington's speech in Atlanta in 1895, where he was saying that, you know, economically we can be united like a fist. When it comes to social matters, we can be as separate as the fingers on a hand. And you know, that's why all the white philanthropists gave him the money. During Booker T's time, if black people needed money, they had to go to Booker. And when black people was trying to get jobs up north, the white folks would say, "Does Booker T. Washington endorse you? If it was all right with Booker, you got the job." And Booker and his nemesis was can't think of that brother's name, but he needed some money. Needed about $10,000, and he had to go to Booker T to get the money. And he couldn't stand Booker T, but he went on and played it to get his money. His name was on the tip of my tongue. And once Booker wrote the check, gave him the money, he got to the door and said, "I still think you a traitor to the race," and walked out. But he still had his $10,000 that he came for. Martin Delaney. Martin Delaney. Yeah. So anyway, it was a good night tonight.
Yes, sir. Yes, so excellent information. If you want some real good information, you come to Conscious Corner and the CEN show. We got it for you. We got everybody. We have 173 videos, and it's on audio also on the website. So we are building a tremendous wealth of knowledge on our platform. So I'm gonna go ahead. Yes, sir.
You send the videos on the website too?
We have on the website, we only have the audio.
Okay, that's all I was going to be clear.
All right. So each one teach one in Conscious Corner. Everybody have a good evening.
All right.